There is something almost comical, almost tragically ironic, about the way most people think of intelligence. They imagine it as a lottery ticket, a kind of cosmic prize handed to a select few before birth, sealed in genetic envelopes and delivered only to the chosen ones. If you didn't win the ticket, well, too bad. Enjoy your life in the spectators' seats while the so-called geniuses perform on stage. But if Carl Sagan were standing here, looking at you with that half-smile that always seemed to hold an entire galaxy of gentle sarcasm, he would say something completely different, something that would flip the table, the script, and maybe even your self-doubt. He would say, "You were never lacking intelligence. You were only lacking the instructions to unlock it." And that is where our journey begins. Not with the arrogance of a secret formula, not with the promise of overnight brilliance, not with a cliché of "everyone is a genius," but with a perspective grounded in something far more powerful. The idea that the human mind is not a fixed resource, but a cosmos waiting to be explored. Just as Sagan looked up at the night sky and saw not darkness, but possibility, he looked at the human mind and saw a vast network of untapped potential, waiting for curiosity, discipline, imagination, and humility to ignite it like stars exploding into existence. Today you are about to walk through the 7 levels to unlock a genius mind. Not my levels, not internet guru levels, but levels inspired by the very principles that Sagan embodied: the scientific mindset, the cosmic perspective, the fearless curiosity, and the almost childlike sense of wonder that made him one of the most influential communicators of knowledge in human history. This is not a motivational speech in disguise. It's a map. A map not to a single destination, but to a state of mind that grows, evolves, and expands infinitely, just like the universe itself. But before we begin, let's shatter the biggest lie of all: the idea that genius is something distant from you. Think about this for a moment. If your brain is made of the same atoms forged in the hearts of ancient stars, if your consciousness is the latest chapter in a story 8 billion years old, if your ability to think is literally the universe becoming aware of itself, how could you ever believe you are ordinary? Ordinary compared to what? A supernova? A nebula? A black hole? Even those structures are not special. They are natural consequences of the laws of physics, and so is your intelligence. The purpose of this video and the purpose of these 7 levels is simple: to show you that genius is not a miracle, it is a process. It is not a possession, it is a practice. It is not a label, it is an evolution. A genius mind does not think faster, it thinks deeper. It does not have more ideas, it sees the invisible patterns between them. It does not memorize more information, it asks better questions. And above all, it does not assume it knows everything. It understands the infinite scale of what it doesn't know. If you've ever felt small when thinking about the universe, Sagan would say you misunderstood the feeling. The goal is not to make you feel insignificant, but to remind you that you belong to something infinitely vast. When you zoom out to a cosmic scale, your problems shrink, your fears loosen their grip, and your mind begins to stretch into territories it never dared explore before. That's when learning becomes exciting. That's when thinking becomes pleasurable. That's when creativity bursts out like solar flares you didn't know you had. And here's the twist: unlocking a genius mind has nothing to do with complexity. In fact, the very first steps involve simplicity, returning to the mindset you had as a child, the mindset Sagan admired so deeply: curiosity without shame, imagination without limits, wonder without filters. The cosmos is not complicated on purpose. It only appears that way because we stopped asking the right questions. So consider this your invitation. For the next few minutes, suspend everything you think you know about your own intelligence. Imagine that today is the first day you truly meet your own mind. Imagine that behind every thought you've ever had, there is a hidden room you've never opened. Imagine that Carl Sagan himself, with that calm voice that made the universe feel like home, is handing you the key and saying, "Go on, explore." Because the truth is simple: you are capable of infinitely more than you think. And if you're ready to discover how, then let's take the first step into the cosmic architecture of the mind. Let's illuminate the 7 levels. Let's start the ignition sequence. If you're ready to unlock your mind, comment. Level 1, activated. There is a strange paradox about intelligence that most people never notice. The smarter someone becomes, the less certain they are about anything. Not because they lack confidence, not because they doubt themselves in a negative way, but because they understand something fundamental about reality. The world is full of illusions, assumptions, half-truths, mental shortcuts, and beliefs inherited from generations before us. And Carl Sagan knew better than anyone that the very first step toward unlocking a genius mind is learning to question those illusions. That is why the journey begins not with knowledge, but with healthy skepticism. Skepticism, when practiced the way Sagan understood it, is not cynicism. It is not negativity. It is not a refusal to believe in anything. In fact, it is the exact opposite. It is the refusal to believe in the wrong things. It is the discipline of asking for evidence, of testing ideas, of challenging your own opinions before challenging those of others. It is the courage to say, "I don't know," followed by the confidence to add, "But I want to find out." Most people build their worldview like a fragile tower, stacking assumptions on top of assumptions, hoping no one touches it. A genius mind builds the opposite way. It digs deeper, removing the weak foundations so that only truth remains. Sagan believed that skepticism is not an obstacle to knowledge. It is the gateway. Without it, you accept illusions as truth. And once your foundation is built on illusions, everything you learn after that becomes distorted. With skepticism, you clear the debris of false beliefs and create space for real understanding to grow. Imagine you are holding a flashlight in a dark forest. Skepticism is the battery that keeps the light alive. Without it, your mind walks in the dark, bumping into ideas, tripping over misconceptions, mistaking shadows for threats and illusions for wisdom. But with it, the path becomes clearer. You begin to see what others overlook. You begin to notice the cracks in their thinking, the inconsistencies in arguments, the shortcuts your own brain tries to take. This is why Sagan famously warned about the dangers of blind belief. He saw how easily humans fall into mental traps. Superstition, wishful thinking, emotional reasoning, traditions repeated without questioning, not because people are foolish, but because the human mind naturally prefers comfort over truth. To seek truth requires effort. To accept a pleasant lie requires nothing. Skepticism is the discipline that forces your mind to do the hard work of thinking. Many people fear skepticism because they think it will make life colder or emptier or too rational. But Sagan believed the opposite. He believed that when you remove false wonders, you make space for real ones. When you stop believing in easy answers, you open the door to deeper mysteries. When you stop accepting comfortable illusions, you discover the extraordinary beauty of reality itself. Healthy skepticism also applies inward. One of the greatest signs of intelligence is the willingness to question your own thoughts. A genius mind is not afraid to admit, "I might be wrong," because it recognizes that being wrong is the first step toward becoming right. Sagan admired people who changed their minds when presented with better evidence. He considered that a superpower, a sign of flexibility, humility, and intellectual courage. Think about how rare that is. Most people defend their beliefs like soldiers defending a flag, even when the belief is flawed. They cling to it because it feels safe, but your mind can never evolve while it is busy protecting comfort. Skepticism breaks that cage. It forces you to evaluate, analyze, reconsider. It allows you to grow. Here is the real secret. Skepticism is not just a thinking tool. It is a shield. A shield against manipulation, misinformation, fear-based narratives, and emotional traps designed to control you. When your skepticism is sharp, you are not easily fooled. You do not fall for easy answers or miracle solutions. You become mentally independent. And independence is the birthplace of genius. Sagan often said that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. This is the heart of level 1. Before you accept an idea, ask for the proof. Before you conclude something, challenge your own reasoning. Before you trust your intuition, check the facts. This does not weaken your thinking. It strengthens it. It makes every belief you hold more reliable, every decision more grounded, every insight more meaningful. And here is the final irony. Once you adopt healthy skepticism, you do not become more doubtful. You become more confident. Not because you think you know everything, but because you trust the method you use to discover truth. You stop relying on chance and start relying on clarity. You stop depending on inherited beliefs and start building your own structure of thought. This is how the genius mind begins. Not with knowing, but with questioning. Comment below. I question to understand. There is a moment in childhood that almost everyone remembers, a moment when the world felt enormous, mysterious, full of hidden doors and invisible rules. Back then, every object was a puzzle, every noise was a question, every new discovery was fuel for a mind that never seemed to get tired. Children don't learn because they are told to learn. They learn because the universe feels too interesting to ignore. That state, that pure, unstoppable drive to understand, is what Carl Sagan considered one of the defining traits of true intelligence. And it is the foundation of level 2, radical curiosity. Curiosity is not simply wanting to know more. It is the engine that powers all exploration, creativity, and scientific progress. It is the hunger that pulls the mind out of comfort and pushes it into the unknown. Without curiosity, knowledge becomes a chore. With curiosity, knowledge becomes an adventure. Sagan believed that the difference between an ordinary mind and a genius mind is not the amount of information they hold, but the intensity of their desire to discover. Radical curiosity means refusing to accept the surface of things. It means asking not just why, but why again and why again, until the layers peel back and the deeper truth is exposed. This is what children naturally do. They interrogate reality with persistence, fascination, and sometimes even annoyance. Adults often stop doing this, not because they lose the ability, but because they lose the permission. Society rewards obedience, not curiosity. Schools teach answers, not questions. Work environments favor predictability, not exploration. But genius requires the opposite. It requires a mind that is willing to wander, investigate, and follow intuition, even when it leads to strange or inconvenient places. It requires the courage to ask the questions everyone else ignores. Sagan once said that understanding the universe begins with the simple act of wondering. Wonder is not passive. It is a spark that ignites the entire machinery of thought. Curiosity is also deeply emotional. People imagine intelligence as a cold, calculated thing, but in reality, the most brilliant minds in history were fueled by passion, by a burning desire to understand something bigger than themselves. Curiosity is the emotion of discovery. It is excitement disguised as thought. When you follow curiosity, learning feels like breathing. Natural, effortless, necessary. One of the most powerful aspects of radical curiosity is how it transforms ordinary life. Suddenly, the sky is not just blue. It becomes a question about light scattering and atmospheric composition. A leaf is not just a leaf. It becomes a miniature chemical factory powered by starlight millions of years old. Your own thoughts are not just thoughts. They become electrical storms shaped by neurons, memories, and billions of years of evolution. Curiosity reveals that the world is not simple. The world is layered, interconnected, alive with meaning. And here is the irony. The more curious you become, the more humble you feel. Because every question answered opens 10 new questions. Every concept understood reveals entire fields you didn't know existed. This is why curiosity and humility grow together. A closed mind stops learning. An open mind grows infinitely. Sagan often emphasized that curiosity is the antidote to arrogance. The moment you believe you know enough is the moment your mind stops evolving. Another key part of radical curiosity is the willingness to explore topics outside your comfort zone. A genius mind is never limited by categories. It jumps from astronomy to philosophy, from biology to history, from physics to art, not to become an expert in everything, but to discover the connections between things. Curiosity creates bridges between fields, and those bridges often lead to breakthrough insights. Sagan himself combined science with poetry, data with imagination, facts with storytelling. He understood that curiosity thrives in complexity. Curiosity also requires vulnerability. It means admitting you don't know. It means risking feeling confused. It means embracing the discomfort of uncertainty. But that discomfort is fertile soil. The seeds of genius grow there. When you allow yourself to not understand something, you give your mind permission to expand. Radical curiosity trains your brain to seek patterns, notice details, and question assumptions. The more you use it, the sharper it becomes. Like a muscle, curiosity grows stronger when exercised. It becomes a habit, a default mode of thinking. And once it becomes a habit, The world transforms into a permanent invitation to explore. Sagan believed that humans are born curious, but often taught out of it. Level 2 is about reclaiming that lost instinct, about remembering that you are not just living in the universe, you are part of it, connected to it, shaped by it. Curiosity is the bridge between your mind and the cosmos. And here is the final truth. A genius mind is not the one who knows the most, but the one who wants to know the most. Curiosity is the spark that lights the path to every other level in this journey. Without it, nothing expands. With it, everything becomes possible. Comment: I choose curiosity. There is a kind of thinking that lives beyond logic, a way of seeing the world not only as it is, but as it could be. This is the territory of imagination, not childish fantasy, not escapism, but a creative force powerful enough to reshape reality itself. Carl Sagan understood this deeply. After all, every scientific breakthrough begins as an idea that did not yet exist, a possibility glimpsed in the mind long before it becomes fact. That is why Level 3 is cosmic imagination, the ability to think beyond boundaries, expand beyond limitations, and envision what lies outside the visible horizon. Most people misunderstand imagination. They think it belongs to artists, dreamers, writers, or children building worlds out of cardboard. But imagination is far more than creativity. It is a cognitive tool, a mechanism of discovery, a way of combining information in new and unexpected ways. To imagine is to explore, to simulate, to build mental models of alternate possibilities. Without imagination, knowledge becomes static. With imagination, knowledge becomes alive. Sagan used imagination as a telescope. With it, he traveled to distant exoplanets, navigated hypothetical worlds, and contemplated civilizations that might exist light years away. He used imagination not to escape reality, but to illuminate it. He knew that every great scientific insight required a kind of mental elasticity, the ability to stretch the mind into regions where evidence had not yet arrived but logic pointed the way. Cosmic imagination goes beyond personal creativity. It is the practice of thinking at the scale of the universe. It's the ability to see your daily life as part of a larger cosmic narrative, to look at a grain of sand and remember that it is made of ancient stardust, to hold a book and realize that every word on the page is the product of millions of years of cognitive evolution. When you adopt the cosmic perspective, imagination becomes a natural extension of awe. But imagination does not come from nowhere. It grows from curiosity and skepticism, the previous levels. Skepticism clears away false assumptions. Curiosity opens the path to exploration. Imagination combines everything you discover into something new. These three levels form a triad of genius. When you imagine freely, you create new conceptual spaces where breakthroughs can occur. Think about the most transformative ideas in human history: the theory of evolution, the concept of gravity, quantum mechanics, spaceflight, the internet. Each of these began not with data, but with someone daring to imagine what others considered impossible. Genius is not simply the accumulation of knowledge. It is the ability to rearrange knowledge into new forms. Imagination is the catalyst. Cosmic imagination requires freedom, the freedom to think without embarrassment, without limitations, without the fear of being wrong. One of the greatest enemies of imagination is self-consciousness. People stop imagining boldly because they are afraid of being judged, misunderstood, or ridiculed. But Sagan understood that every idea worth exploring begins as something unconventional. The universe itself is unconventional, bizarre, magnificent, chaotic, and elegant. Imagination matches its nature. Another critical aspect of cosmic imagination is analogy. Sagan was a master of analogy, turning complex scientific ideas into poetic, relatable images that captured the essence of truth. Imagination uses analogies to connect distant concepts. It allows you to jump from the known to the unknown. This is how innovation happens, by bridging ideas that have never been combined before. Imagination also enhances problem solving. When you imagine multiple outcomes, perspectives, and pathways, your mind becomes flexible. Rigid thinkers break under pressure. Imaginative thinkers adapt. They find solutions that others overlook because they are willing to visualize new possibilities. Imagination turns limitations into doors. There is also a spiritual dimension to imagination, not in the supernatural sense, but in the deeply human sense. When you imagine, you participate in creation. You shape the future. You project your thoughts into possibilities that may one day become real. The cosmic imagination is deeply empowering. It reminds you that you are not just observing the universe, you are actively participating in its evolution through your ideas. To cultivate cosmic imagination, you must give your mind space to wander. You must feed it images, stories, concepts, and questions. You must allow silence, contemplation, and mental play. Imagination flourishes in open mental environments, not in rigid schedules. It needs time, wonder, and freedom. Cosmic imagination also teaches you to hold multiple realities in your mind without forcing them into premature conclusions. It trains you to tolerate the unknown, to sit with uncertainty, to explore the far edges of thought without clinging to immediate answers. That is the birthplace of genius. In the end, cosmic imagination is not about escaping Earth. It is about seeing Earth with cosmic clarity. It is about realizing that your mind is not confined to your skull. It is capable of traveling light years in a fraction of a second, of touching the past, envisioning the future, and discovering patterns that connect everything. A genius mind does not merely learn, it imagines. It paints new possibilities onto the canvas of reality. Comment: I choose to imagine beyond the obvious. Genius is often romanticized as a sudden flash of insight, a lightning strike of brilliance that appears out of nowhere, as if the universe suddenly whispered a secret into someone's ear. But Carl Sagan understood a truth that many people overlook. Genius is far less about moments of inspiration and far more about the quiet, consistent discipline of thought. Ideas do not appear fully formed. They grow, evolve, sharpen, and mature through the daily habits of a mind that refuses to stay still. This is why Level 4 is discipline of thought, the steady force that transforms curiosity and imagination into real understanding. Discipline of thought is not strictness, nor is it rigidity. It is not forcing your mind to obey commands like a soldier. It is the opposite. It is the commitment to creating an environment where your thoughts can flourish. It is the practice of returning to your ideas again and again, refining them the way a sculptor shapes stone. A disciplined mind is not one that suppresses itself, but one that organizes itself. Carl Sagan embodied this through his habits. He read constantly, wrote consistently, questioned regularly, and revisited old ideas with fresh eyes. He treated thinking as a craft, something that could be sharpened through repetition, reflection, and structure. A genius mind is not chaotic, it is deliberate. One of the core elements of disciplined thought is clarity. Most people do not suffer from lack of ideas. They suffer from mental fog. Thoughts swirl around without direction. Questions dissolve before they become clear. Insights vanish because they were never captured. Discipline cuts through that fog. It forces you to define your thoughts, articulate them, write them down, examine them from different angles. Writing is one of the most powerful tools for disciplined thinking. When you write, your mind slows down long enough for ideas to take shape. Sagan often used writing to clarify complex scientific concepts. He knew that if something could not be explained simply, it was not yet understood deeply. Writing forces precision, and precision reveals truth. Another part of disciplined thought is consistency. A genius mind does not grow from occasional bursts of effort. It grows from small daily practices. Reading a few pages, reflecting on a question, exploring a concept, revisiting a problem. Knowledge compounds like interest. Each day adds a layer. After months of consistency, your mind becomes sharper. After years, it becomes extraordinary. Discipline also means learning how to manage your attention. We live in a world filled with noise, distractions, and endless streams of superficial information. A disciplined mind knows how to filter. It knows what to ignore. It knows how to protect focus, the most valuable currency of intelligence. Sagan often spoke about the importance of distinguishing signal from noise. The universe is full of both. So is the mind. A disciplined thinker learns to slow down, not because they lack urgency, but because they value depth over speed. Fast thinking is useful for survival. Deep thinking is useful for wisdom. When you slow your thoughts down, you allow connections to form that would be invisible at high speed. Discipline creates the mental space needed for insight. Another aspect of disciplined thinking is structured curiosity. Curiosity without direction becomes chaos. Curiosity with discipline becomes exploration. A disciplined mind chases questions methodically, step by step, forming hypotheses, testing ideas, revising conclusions. This structure does not limit curiosity, it enhances it. It turns wandering into discovery. Emotional discipline is also crucial. The mind cannot think clearly when overwhelmed by fear, anxiety, ego, or impatience. A genius mind is calm, not because it feels no emotions, but because it knows how to navigate them. Sagan understood the emotional weight of scientific inquiry, the frustration of uncertainty, the disappointment of failed experiments, the humility of being wrong. Discipline provides stability during those moments. One of the most underappreciated aspects of disciplined thought is the ability to pause, to step back, to think before reacting, to analyze before concluding. Pausing is not weakness, it is power. It allows the mind to respond instead of merely react. In a world that demands instant answers, a disciplined thinker chooses deliberate answers, and that difference changes everything. Discipline also means embracing boredom. Not the boredom of dullness, but the boredom that occurs right before a breakthrough, when your mind has been wrestling with a complex idea long enough to stretch itself. Most people quit during this phase. A disciplined thinker pushes through, trusting the process. Finally, discipline of thought is the bridge between imagination and reality. Curiosity sparks ideas. Imagination expands them. But discipline is what transforms them into knowledge, discoveries, and innovations. It grounds the cosmic into the practical. It turns dreams into blueprints. Sagan knew that the universe rewards those who keep showing up, not just those who wait for lightning to strike. Comment: I discipline my mind. When Carl Sagan spoke about the cosmos, people often assumed he was talking only about stars, galaxies, and swirling clusters of cosmic dust. But they missed something crucial. Sagan was also talking about systems, about the hidden structures underneath everything humans experience. Economic systems, social systems, psychological systems, biological systems, even the personal systems operating inside each of us every day without our awareness. Unlocking a genius mind requires stepping into this fifth level, the ability to think systemically, to see beyond events and into the mechanisms that cause those events, to observe not only the dots but the patterns connecting them. This is where ordinary intelligence ends and profound understanding begins, because systemic thinking dissolves illusions and reveals the machinery behind reality itself. Most people live reacting to outcomes. They get angry when something goes wrong. They celebrate when something goes right, yet they rarely ask the question that makes a mind powerful. Why? Why did this happen? What force created this event? What chain of interactions led to this moment? Systemic thinkers don't see events as isolated moments. They see them as signals, as indicators of deeper structures. This is the same lens Sagan used when analyzing civilizations. He did not analyze societies by what they claimed to believe, but by how their core systems shaped their behavior. He knew that if you want to change something, you must understand the system driving it, because outcomes are not random. They are produced layer by layer by the system that contains them. Imagine someone trying to lose weight. Most people focus on the event. They eat less, they jog a little, they expect results, and then they wonder why nothing changes. It's because they treated the symptom, not the system. The reason behind their failure could be emotional patterns, metabolic factors, sleep habits, stress levels, or environmental cues. Until they see the system, they cannot change the outcome. The same applies to learning, career, relationships, and creativity. A genius mind understands this principle so deeply that it becomes second nature. Before reacting, it analyzes. Before blaming, it investigates. Before concluding, it maps the system behind the phenomenon. Systemic thinking is also about zooming out, often much further than feels comfortable. When Sagan asked humanity to look again at that dot, referring to the pale blue dot image, he was not simply being poetic. He was engaging in systemic thinking on a cosmic scale. By zooming out to the scale of the universe, he reframed human behavior, human conflict, and human fragility. That famous reflection is a perfect example of how changing the system's scope changes the meaning of the events inside it. Wars, divisions, ideologies. Everything looks different once you understand the larger system containing them. To reach level 5, you must train your mind to see links where others see separation, to study processes where others study fragments, to search for the underlying rules rather than memorizing surface details. Ask yourself, what system produces this? Where does the loop begin and where does it close? What feedback mechanisms are operating here? When you adopt this lens, every problem becomes solvable, every conflict becomes understandable, and every idea becomes expandable. Systemic thinking elevates you from reacting to designing, from guessing to predicting, from following to orchestrating. And here's the twist. Systemic thinkers don't just understand complexity. They simplify it. They create mental models, maps, and frameworks that transform chaos into clarity. This is why great scientists, innovators, and leaders appear to possess a kind of effortless intelligence. Their minds are trained to see the structure beneath the surface, and once you see structure, nothing feels random anymore. You become calmer, more strategic, more aware. You make decisions not based on impulses but on an understanding of the whole system at play. This is what Sagan hoped humanity would learn: to think on deeper levels, to see beyond immediate appearances, to question the architecture of reality. Because only systemic thinkers can truly influence the future. They don't just change actions, they change systems, and by doing that, they change outcomes for entire generations. Before you continue, tell me in the comments, what is one system in your life you suddenly realized has been shaping your results all along? At the 6th level of unlocking a genius mind, we step into a dimension of thinking that Carl Sagan dedicated his entire life to teaching: the cosmic perspective, a shift so profound, so destabilizing, and so transformative that once you glimpse it, you can never entirely return to the small, narrow frame you used to inhabit. Most people believe genius comes from knowing more, memorizing more, or producing more. But Sagan showed us that true genius emerges from perspective, the angle from which you view your existence, your problems, your goals, and your place in the universe. And the wider your perspective becomes, the more intelligently you can navigate the world. Think about it. So much of human suffering comes from perspective blindness. We obsess over inconveniences. We overreact to petty conflicts. We assume the world revolves around our routines and beliefs. A delayed email frustrates us. A disagreement destabilizes us. An unexpected obstacle throws us into chaos. But all of this happens inside a frame so small, it might as well be microscopic. Sagan spent decades expanding that frame for humanity. He asked us to imagine Earth as a pale blue dot, suspended in an enormous cosmic ocean, fragile and finite, the only home we have ever known. He knew that once you understand the scale of the cosmos, everything shifts. Your priorities reorganize themselves. Your fears shrink. Your sense of connection grows. And suddenly, your mind expands into territories you never explored before. The cosmic perspective is not about looking at stars to feel small. It is about realizing that smallness is liberating. When you recognize your place in the universe, you stop pretending the universe revolves around you, and instead you begin to revolve around meaning, curiosity, and wonder. This is where genius begins, not in ego, but in humility, not in certainty, but in awe. The moment you accept that you are part of something unimaginably larger, your mind unlocks new capabilities. Creativity expands, empathy deepens, and resilience strengthens, because you no longer interpret challenges as catastrophic events, but as micro-moments in a vast timeline. Think of the cosmic perspective as the antidote to intellectual narrowness. When you operate without it, your thinking becomes trapped inside loops. Societal expectations, personal insecurities, cultural limitations. You make choices based on proximity. What is right in front of you, rather than on significance. You allow urgency to dominate importance. You let noise drown out meaning. But when you adopt the cosmic perspective, you zoom out far enough to see the bigger picture, the long-term consequences, the larger patterns, the interconnections between actions and outcomes. You begin to choose differently, not because you know more, but because you see more. Sagan believed that this expanded vision was essential not only for science, but for humanity's survival. Without it, we fall into tribalism, conflict, and short-term thinking. With it, We develop compassion, foresight, and a sense of responsibility that transcends borders and generations. A genius mind is not merely powerful, it is conscious, aware of how its decisions ripple across time and space. When you think cosmically, you stop asking, "What benefits me today?" and start asking, "What contributes to the evolution of everything tomorrow?" That is the kind of thinking that shapes civilizations. But the cosmic perspective is not only philosophical, it is practical. It enhances decision-making, reduces anxiety, and increases mental clarity. When you realize that your current setback is insignificant on a cosmic scale, you free yourself from paralysis and overthinking. When you understand that humanity is connected by the same fragile thread of existence, you communicate with more empathy. When you notice that time stretches billions of years behind you and ahead of you, you stop rushing through life and start living intentionally. This perspective gives you something rare in modern society: psychological spaciousness, the ability to think without being suffocated by urgency. This is why the cosmic perspective is the sixth level. It elevates your mind above everyday noise and trains you to think from a higher vantage point. From that vantage point, genius becomes not a talent, but a byproduct of perception. You begin to ask deeper questions, seek more meaningful answers, and engage with reality not as a passive observer but as an explorer. The universe becomes your classroom, your mirror, and your reminder that if you want to unlock your full potential, you must learn to see yourself not as the center, but as part of an extraordinary whole. Before we move to the final level, tell me in the comments, what changed in your thinking the first time you imagined Earth as a pale blue dot? We've reached the seventh and final level, the place where a genius mind is no longer something you unlock, but something you become. The stage Carl Sagan embodied more than any thinker of his era: existential curiosity. This is the level where the mind stops seeking answers for comfort and starts seeking questions for expansion, where you no longer pursue certainty, but exploration, where curiosity becomes not just a tool, but a way of living, breathing, and interpreting existence itself. Most people stop asking questions early in life. They are born curious, but trained into compliance, taught to memorize instead of wonder, instructed to accept instead of investigate. Society rewards predictable answers, not uncomfortable questions. It praises correctness over discovery. But Sagan resisted that conditioning with every breath. He understood that the universe is not a puzzle to be solved once, but an ocean of mysteries that deepen the more you explore them. This is why existential curiosity is the ultimate level. It is the engine, the fuel, the spark that keeps a genius mind expanding long after everyone else has stopped growing. Existential curiosity means you do not simply ask, "What is this?" You ask, "Why does this exist at all? How does it connect to everything else? What hidden mechanisms drive it? What would happen if the rules were different?" These are the questions that gave birth to astronomy, physics, philosophy, biology, and every field that attempts to understand the cosmos. This kind of curiosity is not casual. It is relentless, fearless, almost rebellious. It pushes you to confront the unknown instead of avoiding it. It demands that you stretch your imagination beyond the limits of your comfort. It invites you to see life not as a fixed structure, but as an unfolding universe of possibilities. At this level, curiosity is no longer about accumulating facts. It becomes an existential stance, a way of standing before the universe with humility and wonder. Sagan often reminded us that we are star stuff, contemplating stars, that the atoms in our bodies were forged in ancient stellar explosions, that thinking about the universe is, in some sense, the universe thinking about itself. This realization fuels existential curiosity because once you understand that you are part of something so ancient and magnificent, you begin to crave understanding not out of fear, but out of a deep desire to connect with your origins. A genius mind at level 7 does not see questions as threats to stability, but as portals to deeper awareness. Instead of asking, "What do I already know?" you ask, "What have I not yet imagined?" Instead of seeking the safety of clear answers, you explore the freedom of uncertainty. This is the mindset that leads to breakthroughs, scientific discoveries, artistic revolutions, philosophical insights. Not because it guarantees correctness, but because it opens the mind to territories untouched by convention. Existential curiosity also rewires your emotional relationship with the unknown. Most people fear uncertainty. They grasp onto routines, traditions, and beliefs to shield themselves from the vastness of everything they don't understand. But a level 7 mind moves toward uncertainty, not away from it. You begin to feel excitement where others feel intimidation, possibility where others feel danger, opportunity where others feel chaos. This shift transforms your behavior, your creativity, and your ability to adapt. You stop seeing life as something that happens to you and start seeing it as something you actively explore. Sagan believed that curiosity was not only the foundation of science, but the foundation of meaning. Without curiosity, life becomes repetitive, mechanical, predictable. With curiosity, life becomes a journey, and the universe becomes the map. The moment you reconnect with the wonder you had as a child, the world around you expands again. You start noticing details you ignored for years. You start questioning assumptions you accepted blindly. You start imagining futures that once seemed impossible. This is the kind of thinking that builds geniuses, not because of intelligence, but because of imagination. At the 7th level, you don't simply unlock a genius mind. You activate a lifelong engine of discovery. You become the kind of person who reads the world with fascination, who listens to silence as if it carries messages, who looks at the night sky and feels the pull of the infinite. You begin to understand that the universe is not something outside of you. You are participating in it. Your thoughts, your questions, your curiosity, all of it is part of the cosmic dance Sagan spent his life trying to illuminate. And perhaps the most important transformation of all, existential curiosity removes the ceiling from your potential. Because as long as you keep questioning, you keep growing. As long as you keep exploring, you stay alive in the deepest sense. As long as you remain curious, your mind cannot stagnate. This is the true genius, not perfection, not certainty, not superiority, but a thirst that never ends. If this final level awakens something in you, comment below. What big question about existence has been echoing in your mind lately?